of the series How Livestorm Uses Livestorm. We're going to be talking about customer onboarding today. Just while everyone joins, to mention, this is the fourth of our series, How Livestorm Uses Livestorm. So previously we did lead generation, employee onboarding, and product demos. So I'll put the links in the chat if you want to see those different, those past sessions. Today, I'm joined by Hannah and Edwin, who are our CSM experts here at Livestorm. They're going to be telling you of their whole process and how they use the tool. I'm going to just do a quick intro of Livestorm and specifically how we're going to roll today. This is a live event. It will be recorded, so you will get the recording at the end. It's going to be interactive. We'll have a couple of polls coming, so watch out. I'll actually post the first one now, so you're familiar with the system. So you have a polls tab. There's also a questions tab. We will be taking live Q&A at the end of the session. So stay till the end. We're here for about 30 to 45 minutes, questions included. Please post them in the questions tab. That way we can prioritize them and find them. And feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us where you're coming from, and also the poll, if you're already using Livestorm for customer onboarding or not. I'll hand it over to Hannah and Edwin, who are our experts today.
Thanks so much, Pauline. Happy Wednesday, everyone. I'm so fortunate that all of you could join us here today. My name is Hannah. I am one of the senior customer success managers here at Livestorm, and I focus on the North EMEA regions. I've been here just over 2 years now. And though I live here in the east of France, this accent is born-bred American fed. And yeah, I'm so excited to talk to all of you today about some of my favorite things, which is working with you. I'll pass the mic off to my wonderful colleague, Edwin.
Thank you, Hannah. I love your energy. It's morning for me, so it's a great way to start the day. To always never change, please. So yeah, my name is Edwin, and I've been with Livestorm for over 4 years now. So it's been it's been a long time, and I manage the Americas region, so North America, as well as some clients in Latin America or South America. I grew up between Dominican Republic and the United States, and right now I'm based out of DR, so we have a hurricane going on close by, but I'm good. And I'll pass on the microphone to Pauline.
Pauline, do you maybe want to walk us through the agenda?
Yeah, Edwin, please stay safe with that hurricane. We're counting on you today. So quickly, I'm just going to be here to moderate. How the session is going to go through is, first of all, we're going to go through what customer onboarding is exactly. If you're here, you probably already have a little bit of some ideas.
Yeah, so absolutely, we can go ahead and get started. Specifically focusing on customer onboarding. We're going to be talking a little bit about what this specifically means here at Livestorm and how this might be applicable for you. Today, we're going to be focusing on, what is customer onboarding exactly, and, why is this applicable, or how could this be applicable for you and your team if you're not already using Livestorm? For those of you who are already unfamiliar, I like to define customer onboarding by it being a process that any new customer goes through when they're using any sort of a product or a service that's been purchased, which is just one part of the customer journey. So the customer journey is something that we're looking at from pre-sales, ultimately with what you would hope to end in a renewal. So it's really important to ensure that there's a strong onboarding that doesn't just stop 30 days after that contract or that deal has been signed. And, if you've gone through a training together, great, but it's really important to instill a support system in place that's going to have a long-term impact on someone's adoption and usage of your service. So we want to think quite critically and help you understand and help your customers understand, how are you navigating your product and services? what's the best use case that they might have for their needs, and really helping position the value that your solution has to this client. So again, we're going to be focusing on the different types of tiers and interactions that are there, but think about what this is going to look like at very different periods of that customer journey. Okay? Now, the reason that I want to focus very much on the customer onboarding aspect is because this is very much a critical moment for a client or a customer's milestone in their journey, right? Because without this, you have that customer, you have that deal, it's been signed, but if there's not a strong onboarding process in place, you very much have a risk of them not successfully adopting the product or really seeing the product's value. So why are they using this? What's the most that they could get out of this? And without this, they're going to ultimately churn. By instilling these, the value, the support that you're able to offer, you're increasing their loyalty, you're creating a very strong customer satisfaction, you're building a relationship together, and you're transforming clients into customers, into power users, into brand ambassadors, right? And advocates. So these are the people that you really want to connect with and really create very intentional dialogue and support systems in place to make sure that they're able to, help support your vision, your brand image, and ultimately help ensure that they're able to be successful using the platform, which is why I really love customer success, because we like to say, as cheesy as it is, that ultimately the most success that we have is instilling success within each of our clients. So we actually have a statistic here that says, 86% of customers say that they'll remain loyal if onboarding and continuous education are provided, which I've worked in customer success for, almost 5 years now. And I would definitely say that there is very much a difference in clients that you've retained and that you've built the relationship with versus clients, who don't have that onboarding, they don't have that relationship in place. So it can really help make or break an experience, whether it's a low touch interaction or medium touch or high touch. Ultimately, having some form of a system in place based on even a tier can really help support long-term success. I see lots of chat. Perfect. But with that in mind, I want to actually redirect the attention of my wonderful colleague Edwin here and talk about some of these key stages of what customer onboarding is and what it looks like.
Thank you so much, Hannah. And please, guys, don't hesitate to use the questions tab. It's right next to the chat tab. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw it in there and we'll make sure to answer them. So yeah, I believe the the stages, these key stages for the onboarding, they're essential. Please don't skip them. Here in Livestorm, we'll start with the handover. So during this phase, we ensure that the primary points of contacts from both our team and the client's team are clearly identified and introduced. Usually, the AE will join this kickoff call that we will organize to introduce the CSM and the AM to the client. In my case, for example, I always introduce myself as the main point of contact for anything product related or in relation to their webinar strategy. And I'll also introduce the account manager as the main point of contact for anything contractual related or anything in terms of billing, and the enterprise support team for any quick inquiries, tech issues, or any bugs that the client might unfortunately experience. And this step is crucial for establishing that solid line of communication and also setting the foundation for a successful partnership. It allows everyone to know who to reach out to for specific concerns or questions. And I'll also try to know who my main champions or who my main champion or main champions are on our client's end. That way I can properly update them on any product updates or when I want to reach out for any follow-up or to schedule a business review or honestly anything else. I always like to build that close relationship with my clients. Another stage is to agree on expectations. And this is very important and it involves having a detailed discussion about what both parties expect. Usually we do that during the kickoff call. And what they expect from that partnership. We cover aspects, in my case, like the date of their first event. I want to be present there. I want to know when their first event is going to take place, what their KPIs are for Livestorm. One question I love to ask is, what will they measure or what will they look at 6 months from now to determine if Livestorm has met their expectation, if they've been successful using the platform? This is not necessarily metrics. I've discovered that most of my clients just want a platform that works smoothly and it's user friendly and it's not giving them any issues at all. And this step is essential to ensure that everyone is on the same page and also to prevent any misunderstandings down the road. Another stage is the product training, and this is the one is really expected. So once those expectations are clear, we proceed to schedule a product training, and this is where we provide comprehensive training session on how to use Livestorm. In our case, the training covers all of the steps on how to create our client's first event, plus the necessary features and functionalities that the client will need to run successful webinars. Our goal here is to empower the client with the knowledge and skills that they'll need to make the most out of the platform. Unsurprisingly, I will host this training session on Livestorm itself. It is, if it's a big audience, I will usually keep the audience muted, kind of like the same format we have today, where I'm on stage and the audience is off stage. However, if it's just one champion or two, or maybe even three, then I like to bring them on stage. So the format will change a little bit, where I'll have them share their camera and microphone, and that way I can ensure that they ask questions live in real time. And I feel like that also avoids making the training session, which is a bit long, and it avoids turning that into a monologue. And in my opinion, I've seen that usually these training sessions are more successful. There's more engagement. The client is usually paying more attention. Another stage is giving the client autonomy to try out the solution. So after the training, we encourage the customer to try out the platform on their own. So we believe the best way to learn is by using the tool itself. So we give that client that autonomy to explore and experiment with the platform. And during this phase, we remain available to answer any questions, provide support. I always tell my clients, go wild, use the platform. You're not going to break anything. There's no real webinar schedule usually. And personally, I always suggest for them to run a dry run or two. And I make myself available to join that dry run. And that way I can ensure I answer any questions on the spot. But that way I can also provide any feedback on how they're using the platform and if they're using all of the features available to them to the best. And I also always offer to shadow their first event. And I like to join this first event 15 minutes before the start of said webinar and ensure I answer any last minute questions and that the webinar runs smoothly. As we all know, the first impressions matter. So I always like to go the extra mile to ensure that that first event is no less than perfect. And on a side note, kind of circling back to the training, I often encourage my clients to play around with the platform before the day of that training session. That way they come with very specific questions to the training session. And yeah, I just believe it's a more productive training overall once they actually know the platform. And in terms of another stage is set the next steps and the meeting cadences. We outline a clear plan for the upcoming phases of the project, including specific tasks, deadlines, and milestones. And this often depends on the client. Some clients might need more help than others. Sometimes they'll need help with integrations down the road. Maybe they have a big upcoming, for example, a big upcoming hybrid event that they need help with, or that they'll need to reach out to me and help them set up that webinar. And lastly, follow-ups and sharing results. So we regularly do check-ins with the clients to review the progress and gather that feedback, and that allows us to understand what is working well and what might need some adjustments. So these continuous follow-ups help maintain a strong relationship with the client as well. And in terms of that way, we know if they're reaching their objectives. For example, we also constantly monitor clients. So if a client has not set up their first webinar, for example, or if they haven't set up a webinar in a long time, we'll usually follow up or reach out to them to ensure everything is okay, to see if maybe they need an extra training or refresher training, or just perhaps a Q&A session. But yeah, and that's pretty much it with the stages. I'll pass on the microphone to you, Hannah.
And every time you speak these CSM words of wisdom, I always feel like I learn so much. And that's probably why I love working with you so much. I think that, we can have these conversations all the time. And I feel like it's always so inspiring because these are things that, we've instilled within our own workflow. These are things, that we actively participate in here at Livestorm, but it's also good to have a refresher, right? I mean, I'm a personal believer in lifelong learning. So being really critical about the processes that we have in terms of those different stages and actively completing those is really important. At least that's my own personal belief. But I'll get off my soapbox and jump into the next one, where we're going to be focusing on onboarding tips. So I'm seeing some great questions in the chat, very specifically asking about, types of onboarding, how we're able to use trainings or how we're able to use different types of interactions. And I promise we will get to those in a Q&A a little bit later. But before we get there, as a sneak peek, I do want to focus on how we can better segment and use onboarding tiers to our advantage. Now, when we think of onboarding tiers, this is going to mean something different to every single team. And that's the point. It's really important to think about and maybe restructure this in a way that's going to be applicable for you and your team. Are your contracts based on service? Are they based on ARR? Are they based on, annual renewals? What does that look like for you? And think about additionally what capacity that you have. Are you a one-man or woman CSM team? Are you, a product team who's looking to have an increased awareness for customer success, or, looking at better product adoption? In any way that these 3 stages or these 3 tiers could be applicable for you and your team. And starting this, I actually want to talk about low touch onboarding. So, thinking about how you can create something at scale that's going to have some sort of a human interaction, though limited. I love using this, and it's something that we actively use here at Livestorm, creating on-demand events, having access to training videos and support in your help center articles, the same within Intercom or any sort of a chatbot that you're using, with event links, with access and resources to help not only maybe focus on general or global training, but also considering the fact that maybe you want to focus on these lightning videos or these quick 10-minute tutorials on something specific. So I love these functions that you're able to use on-demand events for in different capacities, and having different workflows that have a triggered touch point to increase product adoption. My all-time go-to tip, and if you're one of my clients, you will hear it from me, I'm a broken soapbox, is using custom email templates. Now, you might be wondering what this is, and essentially it's exactly that. So when you registered for a Livestorm event or any other event, you typically think about, these reminders, right? So thank you for registering, 24 hours, 5 minutes, and then if you have it or have not attended. But I like to think about using this in a very different, very intentional way, to think about, different types of assets and resources. So if you're focusing on product updates, it's a 10-minute video. Instead of just having something that's going to, thank them for attending the event, use custom emails, send them custom touch points or resources related to this, so you can better ensure adoption and, support based on their needs. Next, I like to think about medium touch onboarding, which is normally tier 2, and it's a combination of automated and personalized resources. So again, we're looking at those same low touch offerings, but also consider how you can create different types of on-demand sessions. You can create exclusive offers for existing customers, or, perhaps existing offers for, lower business or mid-market enterprises, creating bi-weekly or monthly live trainings. Again, and even thinking about how you can offer maybe business reviews or looking at how you can upsell. So a combination of both medium and personalized touches with those soft touches or those low touch interactions can really add value. And then finally, which is something that I love doing, it's just those high touch onboardings. It's those VIP accounts, it's those enterprises, experiences that are just 100% personalized, but still scalable. So it's very much focusing on a more customer-centric approach, with very much a focus on relationship building and nurturing the relationship that you have, whether you're adopting it or whether you're, having this contract from, the very first signing, that kickoff day. You can think about how you can add meaning and how you can use Livestorm in different ways, such as, again, those low to medium touch offerings. You can use our calendar integrations to book calls with them, have everything recorded, use product demonstrations, have one-to-one alignment calls, any of your business reviews or project management calls. I just think that there's so many different ways that you can think about how you can interact with people meaningfully and have everything consolidated within Livestorm. So instead of having to use 5 different tools to focus on, sending out different automated reminders or marketing messages about using a certain tool or a certain function for your platform, if you use on-demand events or if you use any of these live events, you can automatically associate and create templates with these custom emails to redistribute to them to make it a bit easier for your team. Whether you're a one-man group or whether a one-woman group or you have a large scalable organization to work with, we want you to think about how you can take as much extra workload off of you and to make this easier to make at scale so that you can ultimately focus, more importantly, on some of those other aspects. So I hope that this gives you a bit more context. Ultimately, depending on where someone is in their life cycle, again, whether they've already passed onboarding, they're focusing on adoption, all of these things are applicable no matter where someone is in their user journey. So again, our end goal is wanting to ensure that, not only are they renewing, but they have the support in place, they're able to meaningfully use the platform, and they're able to achieve their goals. So one of these or multiple layers of these different aspects or different tiers could be really valuable for your teams. So I'm talking too much, Edwin. I want you to maybe, could you jump on stage and maybe give me a bit more context in terms of what you've seen yourself or maybe how we use different onboarding teams or tiers here at Livestorm?
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of clarify that what I was discussing before was mostly focused on those VIP accounts, which CSM, that's what I do. That's my bread and butter. That's what I do every day. So yeah, just to clarify, it's definitely not what I was discussing. It's definitely not tier 2 or medium touch onboarding or low touch. That's high touch onboarding where we have that initial kickoff call, we have the training. I offer to be there for the rehearsal and also ultimately even shadow that first event. For me, and I totally see, Hannah, how that time saving is great just so you can focus on other things. For my clients, at least, a challenge I faced, and sometimes I feel like I can speak for a lot of other colleagues, CSMs, is just actually engaging that client, engaging that customer. So any chance I have to jump on a call with them, whether that's their first event, to shadow it or help them build perhaps a hybrid event, I just take that chance and interact with them. So for me, that high touch onboarding, trying to build that relationship with the client, it's yeah, that's essential for me. So I always, even though sometimes it's a bit time consuming, I always take that chance to jump on a call with them.
That's one thing I think that we're really fortunate about, specifically working on the customer success team, is that we have a very strong emphasis on building out relationships with our clients and being able to have a lot of those very personal, not only high touch interactions, but very intentional relationship based actions on our end that we're able to support. But every team looks different, specifically based on what capacity you have for service levels, based on tiers, and basically essentially for what you have the capacity and scalability to do in terms of different levels of onboarding. So I promise there is no one secret sauce. If one of these is more applicable for you, great, but maybe a combination of them would be great for you as well. So really it'll depend on what your needs are and how you're able to achieve them. But I promise a combination of these will work just as well as if you just have one over the other. But if you have questions about different types of onboarding, don't hesitate to reach out to our team or reach out in the chat or questions tab. Okay? Perfect. And now I'm actually going to go ahead and I want you to maybe talk a little bit more, Ed, on how you can optimize onboarding session processes.
Yeah, and by the way, thank you for going over all these, Hannah. I believe I've learned quite a few things today, so thank you so much for putting that together. In terms of optimizing the onboarding session processes, uh, like you already mentioned, you can set up a dedicated landing page, and I would love to just share what we have for our Ask Me Anything weekly session and how we've customized that. And this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Hannah, our Ask Me Anything session is more geared towards our medium touch clients. Um, so definitely it's a way to capture many, have many clients on one call, have them ask questions, and not necessarily, and that will save us time, and not have that one-on-one with our more VIP clients. So this is what we have. This is what our or Ask Me Anything landing page looks like. It's it looks very clean in my opinion. It's not that personalized, but I think it's just perfect. And it's just, to me at least, it really encourages me to register for something like this. That being said, what I've noticed, at least with high tier clients, is that the fact that often, because we don't have such big groups of onboarding, what I'll do instead of having a landing page is that I'll manually register my champions. And one other thing, circling back to what I was mentioning before, instead of having the audience muted, meaning going off stage, we can change the settings in Livestorm to allow that audience to go on stage with us. That way they can ask those questions live in real time. And I know you already touched on this, but setting up those automated reminder emails is also great. So usually by default, Livestorm has a 24-hour reminder and 1 hour reminder. We've seen that works great, but sometimes if you schedule some onboarding sessions that are a month into the future, etc., then you might want to add some custom templates, perhaps add a weekly reminder or even a monthly reminder. It really depends. And one thing I love to discuss is how to leverage that replay or those live sessions. Obviously, and in my opinion, the live session is the best. You have people asking questions in real time, right there. It's you can engage your audience. So I believe that's when people retain the most, is the most successful. However, replays are also great. We definitely encourage you to make those replays available to the clients. So what I've seen some clients, and when I speak to them, is sometimes during the training session, maybe they won't understand something, but they can always revisit that replay. And I do the same. Sometimes I'm watching a video conference, and even here internally in Livestorm, and I'll just go ahead and watch that replay in case I missed something or I just didn't understand something. And then you have the on-demand option, which is and I believe this session today is going to be on demand, so you can have your colleagues register for this and watch this replay. So it's a great way when you utilize on demand. Let's say you, in my case, I have one or two champions, and they leave the company, and new champions come in. They can always watch that original tailored training session, and they don't have to reach out to me. We don't have to perhaps waste time looking for a date or time that works for both of us. They can always just start and watch that on demand and digest that content and training, etc. And one last option that personally we don't use in Livestorm, but some of my clients do use it, are those the simulive events. That's basically when you have a pre-recording, you set up an automation, and it's great because you have the advantage of having the replay, but it's live in a sense because one team member can join that simulive event and answer any questions live, but you can just reutilize that content. And lastly, synchronize the registrants and live attendees with your CRM. For example, here in in Livestorm, we offer HubSpot, Pardot, Salesforce, and Marketo. Those are our big four CRMs that we offer. Although, and correct me if I'm wrong, Hannah, besides PlanHat, we don't really CSM team. I don't right now, and maybe something we should do. We don't leverage CRMs. We don't have those integrations in place. Or we just don't have a need for it, honestly, at the moment. And just to move on, one thing I love, and circling back to engaging that audience, I think the biggest challenge, at least for me, is to kind of interact with my clients and engage with them and make sure that they understand how the platform works. I read somewhere that the average attention span during a webinar is around 20 minutes, but for our training, we need to cover a lot. It's impossible for us to host a training session under 20 minutes or even in 30 minutes. So one key aspect during those trainings that I want, or that all of us try to achieve, is keep that audience engaged. And the way we do that is one way is those polls. Personally, I love the mandatory polls. I just think they're amazing. You kill two birds with one stone. One, you engage your audience. If they're a bit distracted, boom, you got that pop up, which you cannot skip. You have to vote. So if someone is distracted, hey, they have to vote for that. But also, on the other hand, you get the data. So let's say you publish a poll and you're doing a knowledge check. You get that data and you can see, hey, my audience is understanding what I'm explaining during this training session. So definitely love mandatory polls. Some other features that we have here internally is a Livestorm timer. For example, for people that talk a lot, like myself, that timer, or a guest speaker that just loves hearing their voice, you got that timer for them, and you make sure that that audience, they're not boring that audience. By the way, I hope I'm not boring any of you today. And then we have the moderator chat. So who knows? Maybe Hannah right now is telling me, Edwin, you're talking too much, but the whole audience, the rest of you, you're not able to see that, and you can leverage that. You can tell your teammates, hey, you're going too fast, your audio is breaking out. And another feature we have is sharing files. That's our handouts feature, and I believe uh, Pauline shared a file, so feel free to go to apps, go to handouts, and download that file, which is actually, it's the presentation today. I'm also just going to publish some best practices for guest speakers and live attendees. This is something we internally created, and I believe is great. Another feature I love are links. So let's go ahead and send one link today. Those links, though, you can promote them above stage. They're great to, again, engage your audience. You can also promote those as a notification. Personally, though, I prefer sending those towards the end. I don't want during the middle of my training session. I don't want to distract my audience, send them somewhere else. I want to keep them with me. So usually I'll share those towards the end. Definitely leverage that, take advantage of those. And then we have the Q&A, which you've been using. And we have emoji reactions. I've seen quite a few here. So, emoji reactions, I think it's a great way to tell, hey, like, either if you don't see any emoji reactions, either your audience doesn't like emojis, or maybe they're just not paying attention. And breakout rooms are also a great way to break down your audience. That's especially true if you have a very big audience. Sadly, in my case, I very rarely have those, so I don't really have that. I don't have a lot of experience with breakout rooms, but I know a lot of my clients do, and they love it. It's a way for you to break down your audience, come up with ideas, and then come back to a main room like that one we're at right now. And lastly, also let the customer take over. In my case, I like to really share those mandatory polls, those links to also show the client, have them experience what their audience will experience when they're using these features as well. So they'll notice, hey, these are mandatory polls. People have to vote, or that way they see how they're being redirected to another page when you publish links. And yeah, I talk a lot. Hannah, please jump in. Let me know. I'm sure I missed something here. Oh, I did. And this is the custom design. I never use it though. I failed at art class. I'm terrible at designing things. I don't want to make my event room, an eyesore. But I'm sure you're good
this
at
is one of our best features. How can you say that you never use
Nope.
this?
Nope, I don't.
This is honestly, I think that, especially when one of your metrics, or, maybe something that's important for your teams is actively having strong brand awareness, or maybe working with partnerships or collaboration, or even if you're just working with, any clients, customizing the event room is really nice because it's going to allow you to create a very personal experience. My go-to is a couch background, and then I will update the logo of, any client that I'm working with at the top left-hand side. Unfortunately, we didn't decorate this room, but I definitely encourage you to check it out. If you have any questions, reach out and let us know. But it can allow you to really incorporate your brand, your logo, and those colors in a lot of different ways that can really enhance the experience. But Ed, 10 out of 10, I recommend checking it out. I think it's something that could really make your event rooms even more exciting, a little bit more engaging. And again, thinking about the big picture, right now we're in this competitive period. I like to call it this sort of Netflix era, because when you're looking for your next binge watch, when you're looking at something to keep you, attentive, there's a lot of different touch points, a lot of different interactions that people go through before actually even getting to that event. So not only do you want people to get there, you want to keep them present and engaged. So That's just my biggest tip, I would say.
Yeah, and to add my 2 cents, some of my clients they really make these event streams their own. Same with the registration page. So it really looks like it's their own. I think people forget it's Livestorm. It's just kind of like a white label feature. That being said, Hannah, I tried it. I can't, but definitely encourage all of you, and please feel free to reach out to us to try out this feature. I think it's amazing. It's great to just personalize that event room.
Speaking about customization, we've already talked, and our audience has very much used some of the presentation interactions here with the reactions, the GIFs, the emojis, and I love it. But I also want to talk a little bit about how you can, better prepare yourself in advance, whether it's, a one-to-one call or a one-to-many. One of my go-tos is actually creating a separate document, whether it's a notepad, something virtual, and pre-creating text so that I can just copy and paste it in. Again, making something that's scalable, but it's also not going to add on top of my workflow. So it's really there to help, create an easier, more relaxed experience for you. So definitely my biggest pro tip. Outside of one that I've already teased a little bit earlier, which is using custom emails, automating your follow-ups, think long-term at scale, because again, it's not just about registering for an event. There's a lot of actions that are going to get people there, right? And proactivity and reactivity and proactivity again, especially for those unresponsive clients, is going to be really essential. And not only having them click register for that event or schedule that call, but keeping people engaged after the session, having clear follow-up actions in your email overview, having different assets and resources followed up in a custom automated email template. You can allow people to be redirected with an auto redirect. You can personalize email follow-ups. You can have replays and assets. The most important thing, I think, that is the most scalable that we can encourage you to do specifically for onboarding is remembering that consistency is going to be so important, having systems in place that you can use at scale, and anticipating next steps and always thinking ahead in terms of strategy and how you can reuse content and anticipate support needed for your clients is going to be the most beneficial thing that you can go ahead and do. I know we've seen a lot of questions here, so I do want to take the time to pause. I want to go ahead and pass the microphone back off to Pauline, our wonderful moderator here today, and maybe go through some of those questions.
Hey, well, thank you so much for sharing all your tips and best practices. I think everyone learned a lot. And let's move on to the couple of questions that we had. We had one from Laura. How do you convince customers who think they don't need onboarding to join a webinar? I think this is really important. And same for unresponsive customers, I think.
Yeah. So in my case, that's something this is a challenge I've had a couple of times where I've had clients like, hey, I already know the platform, or we're already used to live conferencing, so we don't need this. This is like a waste of our time. Like, people don't usually say it like this, but this is basically what they imply. So what I like to offer is like, hey, I'll shadow your event. It doesn't take, you're going to run that webinar. It's not going to take any time away from you. And what I'll do is I'll try to note feedback during that shadowing and share that either via email or on a call and tell them like, hey, you can improve this, you can improve that. Why didn't you use this feature? Why did you, instead of doing perhaps mandatory polls, you did the regular polls? So it's a way for me to convince them like, hey, it's to your advantage to schedule a training with me. I can show you best practices, and this is going to be beneficial to your experience and for you to get the most out of the platform. So that's been a strategy that has worked for me so far.
One thing that I also want to take into consideration is, for our experience, we're using Livestorm. It's our own tool. It's the tool that we're promoting. And, we're using this tool and instilling these best practices and education for clients who are using the same tool. But for so many of you, this is not going to be the case. You're going to use Livestorm to demonstrate, whatever product, whatever tool that you have to ensure successful adoption. And I think the larger question that we need to consider is how can you, leverage Livestorm in a way that's going to present your product, that's going to educate users in a way that's quick, efficient, and consistent, without feeling as though they have to sit through an hour-long training, or, that maybe they don't necessarily need a live call for. So managing expectations at the very beginning from that kickoff, or, that asynchronous, onboarding that you're having together, and instilling not only those best practices, but following up proactively. So, maybe you have an email automation that says, hey, I wanted to check in with you. Let's schedule a call with your link. But, even outside of that, in customer success, we want to be proactive. We want you to think about what tools and features are you not actively using right now. And this is going to require some detective work. So, maybe you're using this with a connection to your CRM. We use PlanHat, for example. So I can have some visibility maybe on what features or what tools you're not actively using. And by investigating this and seeing that they're not being used, I can understand, maybe I want to recommend and position this in a way that's meaningful, and using a high touch interaction for a one-to-one call, best practices or alignment, just to understand, why are they not using this? What can we do to help enable them to do this? And, considering that there are there are many types of people, and some of those interactions to meet those needs can be asynchronous resources as well. So decks, on demand, 10-minute lightning videos, you name it, but it doesn't just have to be an onboarding call that you have face-to-face. And I think that understanding what your client's needs are and anticipating how you can do that at scale is really important.
Thank you. Yeah, indeed. I think having multiple types of formats is definitely one of the solutions. If they don't want to sit through a webinar, they won't. Let's move on to, what do you prefer, one-to-one or one-to-many onboarding?
I'll go ahead first. If I'm fully honest, I prefer having a smaller audience. Like I mentioned before, it's just easier to engage that audience. I can bring them on stage. But if I had to pick, let's say one-to-one, where it's just me and Hannah, or me and a few champions, I prefer that, having the few champions. I just feel it's more interactive. People tend to have more questions, and like the saying goes, two heads think better than one. So you have people asking certain questions or inquiries that perhaps that other person didn't think of. So I just from experience, I've noticed that, at least for me, when I have a couple, at least 2 or 4 people, I feel like that onboarding or that whole training session is just better, more interactive. There's just more ideas thrown in there. But yeah, go ahead, Hannah. Maybe you have a totally different experience than I do.
For me, when I think about one-to-one versus one-to-many, I really want to understand, what specifically that client needs, and, what level of service are they at. So, based on contracts, based on ARR or MRR, do they have service hours that they can use for those one-to-one calls? So this is important, because this can make it a very much a conversation, a free flow of ideas, as Edwin mentioned, where you can make sure that you're addressing their specific needs. But if you're looking for something that's more of a medium touch, or a mid-market, middle service tier, you want to have something that's scalable, because if people don't have access to these service hours or this accessibility to a CSM, then you still want to give them an opportunity to ask questions, to understand how they can better use the platform. And you can use this as an upsell opportunity. You can use this just as an onboarding experience, but I think that it really depends on the expectations that you set specifically in that contract period, and what you realistically need to have from that client. So I think that both have a lot of value to it, but it really just depends on, the preferences that you and the client have, and how you can, clearly manage those specifically from the very beginning, so that, if there's a very clear need for them to have something one-to-one, those expectations are addressed initially, so you can understand how those can be best supported.
Great. Yeah. Indeed, the tier and your time is going to be very important. Last question, and then I think we'll be good and right on time. What if a customer is unresponsive? How do you control this in the churn scenario?
Ed, do you want to go ahead?
I'll let you go first.
Okay. I would say the biggest and most important lesson that I've learned in 5 years of CS is that, if you're waiting until 6 months in to have that business review and talk about what's going well and what's not going well, if they're on a year-long contract, then you've already lost 6 months of potential experiences to help ensure that they're having a smooth transition, clean adoption, and making sure that, you know, their objectives are being hit. So 6 months in is already too late. So initially, you know, whether you have a statement of work, whether it's, you know, in pre-sales, it's really important to understand what expectations and what goals your client has from the very beginning so that you can position yourself as a partner there. So understanding what role and what expectations they have of you so that you can very clearly come up with a concrete action plan, whether it's a high touch interaction, whether there's, you know, a medium touch or low touch onboarding and resources you could share. Very much managing those expectations is going to be important. And it's going to, you know, build that relationship, have strong adoption, and ensure that, you know, there is renewal at the end. But if you're waiting, you know, 6 months in to say, you know, I haven't been able to get any calls with them, you know, there wasn't, you know, great synergy here, you know, what can I do? Be really critical and think about, you know, what actions and systems you have in place from, you know, that initial contract, that kickoff together, and understand, you know, what can we do to control and be more preventative for the future for other clients to ensure that they don't churn. So that's just my feedback. Ed, do you have any insights?
Yeah, totally agree, and I second what you mentioned. I think in an ideal world, the best thing is just to really monitor that client from the start and be proactive, not let it get to the point where they're unresponsive. And I think we've all, if you're a CSM or NCS, we've all been there where we have a client that's sadly unresponsive. So it's better to kind of catch it early on if they, for whatever reason, they're not using the platform. Try to address that as soon as possible. That being said, if that's sometimes you can do that and still the client won't use the platform or they'll just be unresponsive. In those instances, I always just like to take any opportunity. And I had a client recently where they were asking another question totally not even related to the product, and I just took the opportunity to schedule a call with them. Any sort of call where I can try to get them re-engaged, try to get them to use the platform or just to use us as CSM and leverage us. But it's definitely, I think, probably the biggest challenge or one of the biggest challenges that the CSMs face. And there's no secret sauce, like Hannah mentioned earlier on. It's just sometimes some strategies will work for some clients and other times they won't, unfortunately.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Hannah, Edwin, for sharing, for giving your tips, answering all these questions. Lots of insights. Very, very valuable. I think we're right on time, so we're going to stop here. Thanks again, everyone, for joining and taking part in the polls, the interactions, and the chat.
Thanks, everyone.